Recently, I took a trip to Brazil and actually did two expeditions. One was to the, I guess you could call it the headwaters of the Amazon River, and the other trip was to the Paraguay River. And there I was part of a science team, largely from Brazil, and we were looking at biodiversity. On the first trip, it was primarily got equipment organized, and then did multiple flights up to Manaus, and then got on a larger boat, picked up some boatmen and smaller boats, and then different teams of scientists would go out each day to look at different organisms. Some would look at fish, plants. I looked at microbes, for instance. And our overall goal was to look at 20 lakes that are off of the river, floodplain lakes, on each of these river systems. So Amazon was one, there was three others. And we wanted to look at the biodiversity of organisms during the low water or dry period and the high or floodwater period. So after we went out and got our samples, we'd spend the day processing samples, getting things put away, and that ate up a lot of the days. The second trip was to the Pantanal, the largest wetlands in the world, and the main river through there was the Paraguay River, which basically lies between Bolivia and Brazil. And the student that came along was Ben Burdell, and he is a Master of Science student in biology, and he was my TA, and I told him about the trip, and we found a little bit of funding for him, and he was able to go and participate in this expedition. The first part of this expedition I actually spent teaching a class, and Ben was my teaching assistant. So he helped me to organize the labs. We did do sampling on the Paraná River, a very large river in Brazil. The Pantanal was beyond what I expected. Not only was it this maze of wetlands and jungle and so forth, but the wildlife was amazing. Brazil plays in with my greater interest in microbes. One, I don't know what's down there. And in fact, there's not a lot of studies on the bacteria. In fact, while we were down there, some of the other scientists were finding whole new genera, not just species, but whole new genus of species down there. So I'm thinking the microbes will be pretty interesting. Secondly, it's floodplain science. So just like Emaquan is part of the Illinois River floodplain, and I study the microbes, but we're studying all kinds of things about that dynamics. This is a whole nother type of dynamic, and to look at the similarities and differences helps us to build a better understanding of floodplain systems. Funding really came from the CNPq agency, which is Brazil's equivalent of the National Science Foundation. When they wrote this large grant with this team, they said, we'd like you to do what you're doing at Emaquan, studying these microbes and looking at patterns and all that kind of thing, down here and do that with us. So Emaquan played a very nice lead role, this collaboration between countries to go in and get to some of these places. I mean, there's just like no way in the world I would have gotten to some of these places without working with these scientists who knew the ins and outs of the jungle and the rivers and so forth. So it became to be an important opportunity, both for science and just the opportunity of being able to do it. The science part's really cool, but the cultural aspect is really cool, and just traveling is always, I think, one of the best teachers. And to work with people who are really enthused. I mean, we have that here, but it's so nice to work with other people who are just very interested in what they're looking at, and they see it from a different perspective, and you exchange ideas and talk about science and then talk about everything else. It's an excellent experience.